Chelsea fans, welcome back to Talking Chelsea, welcome back to your Chelsea news. Enzo Maresca speaks more on the Crystal Palace game and we hear from Josh Acheampong. Chelsea have rejected a bid for Andrey Santos, we have a player update regarding Nicolas Jackson, and Nkunku to Bayern Munich deal could be falling through. Now of course I'll be giving my own thoughts and opinions on everything that's been reported, but more importantly I want to know what you guys think down below in the comments. And before we get into the video, make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you are a Chelsea fan who enjoys Chelsea content. We're on the road to 10k before the end of 2025. Kicking things off, Maresca said this in a Chelsea interview about the Palace game. He said, for sure, Palace, played 7 or 8 games and we played 2 games last weekend where we shared the minutes. So for sure, this was the first real game today, but for sure, slowly, we are going to get better. He continues to say, we always try to win the game. Unfortunately, we didn't win, but overall, we deserve to. Josh Acheampong also had something to say in his Chelsea interview and he said, Maresca, just told me to play my game and do the best I can. That Mateta is strong, so to be ready and prepared for it. I was definitely expecting a battle with Mateta and I had to be ready for it. There were a lot of 1v1 situations, but it was okay. Now, I totally agree with what Acheampong and what Maresca has said. And in yesterday's review, I was talking to you guys in the comments, and it felt as though, like, you guys felt I was being very negative on yesterday's performance. And I had to go back and rewatch the video, and I honestly felt I was relatively fair. Yes, I just, spoke about the reasons why we didn't get the result over the line, but I also felt like I gave people positives and praise where it was needed. Now, ultimately, the one thing I didn't really talk about is how well-drilled Crystal Palace are. I mentioned it briefly, but they're a very good team under their new manager. They've beat Man City, they've beat Liverpool recently, they're in very good form right now. Very hard team to break down when they're packing the midfield and playing a back 5. I'm sure I mentioned that, but if I didn't, my bad. I should have been mentioning that because they are a very well-drilled team. On the other hand, we have only played 2 games of pre-season. We had a shorter break. Of course, we take that into consideration. My point of view was, from what we saw in the pre-season games and that quick turnaround of 2 games in 2 days and a lot of minutes being shared, we looked ready for the Premier League. We looked insanely sharp, come up against an AC Milan team and a Bayer Leverkusen team who had played their pre-season. So we are comparing against those types of teams. We looked so sharp. So it was just a surprise and a bit of frustration that we couldn't get over the line. Yes, we couldn't break down the back 5. The midfield was packed. I understand that. It really sort of stunted how Maresca wanted us to play. And I feel like we dominated large spells of the game. We went through the match facts. Over 70% possession. Crystal Palace essentially purposely didn't attack as much and sacrificed that part of their game to be tactically spot on defensively, and it worked. Fair play. A draw is a draw, a point is a point, but we were all expecting some sort of win because of the way that we went into the Premier League. I wasn't trying to be overly negative on that, so I apologise if I come across that way, but that's from just conversations with you guys in the comments. I must have got my wires crossed, because I felt like I was negative as well as positive, and I try and be as fair as possible. But going to what Maresca said, I felt like we deserved to win the game. I think that's where a lot of the frustrations come from. We were just very flat, and we couldn't find a solution to the problem that Crystal Palace put up. Now, when it comes to Josh Acheampong, again, a lot of you seem to think I was being very negative on the guy. I absolutely love Josh, and I feel like this will be a breakout season for him. I think he did incredibly well defensively. I just liked to highlight and point it out that his on-the-ball stuff yesterday just wasn't as good as we were expecting to see from Josh, or what we have seen previously. Obviously, he's young, he's going to make mistakes. There was a lot of pressure on him yesterday. But the one thing I probably should have spoke about a bit more is the fact that he dealt with Mateta, and that's a very hard job to do. One thing I noticed about Acheampong is he kept Mateta at an arm's distance. So he couldn't spin him, he couldn't back into him and beat him physically, which 9 times out of 10 he's going to beat him in that sort of scenario. Josh was very smart in his 1v1s and keeping his distance slightly so he could read the spins and he couldn't be backed into physically. But he also used his footballing brain, which is so good to see from Josh Acheampong. I felt like across the fan base we had a split of Josh can't be the centre-back for the whole season, and Josh was unbelievable, best player in the world, and there just can't seem to be anyone in the middle. And hey, if that's how people feel, that's how people feel. I was just trying to call it how I saw it. And look, football's about opinions, and I love having conversation with you guys. I just felt, when I was reading the comments yesterday, I was like, wow, I kind of feel under fire here for just pointing out some few things that maybe people were overlooking because he's young and he did have a good game defensively. And I'm not discrediting that at all. I really like Acheampong. Like I said, I feel like it will be his breakout season. He is going to be getting a lot of minutes. I just felt like his on-the-ball build-up play wasn't as good as what we would like to have seen, which is expected because he's young. In previous games he has played, he's shown how good on the ball he really is. Now look, I'm not saying that he was awful on the ball, because he had a 94% pass completion rate He only missed like 6 passes out of 94 that he made. And that's not atrocious, obviously, but it's just the 6 that he missed led to stuff. One directly led to the free kick. And again, he's not going to be perfect. I'm not saying he is. I'm not saying he's going to be Van Dijk overnight. I was just merely pointing that out. Defensively, he was unbelievable. And I do feel like we did deserve to win that game in terms of if we found a solution to the problem. But Crystal Palace was so well tactically organised, so well drilled, that they just kept us at bay. They just knew how to nullify us. And I felt like there were times in yesterday's game where Maresca needed to shake things up a little bit. We might have had that boring side-to-side passing because we didn't have any line-breaking passes from defence, really. And that's what I felt like we lacked defensively. As a defensive unit, I felt like we were solid. I felt like we were solid as a defensive unit, right? So it's not a complete disregard to the defence. They did very well. I'm just saying that what we're used to seeing is with the likes of Tosin and Colwell is them line-breaking passes to allow us to play quicker from the back, which we missed massively yesterday. And because Crystal Palace packed the midfield, we couldn't play quickly through the midfield like we usually do on the half turn in them half spaces with the likes of Caicedo and Enzo and Palmer dropping deep sometimes. So it was a multitude of things. But yeah, I totally agree with Acheampong. I think he did very, very well against Mateta. That is a hard job to be doing, and he kept him quiet. I think Mateta had one shot from about 25 yards out. Fair play. Do you know what I mean? You know, he's a brute. And I like Acheampong. He's young. He's going to get better. He was going to get a lot of minutes. And like I keep saying, I feel like this season will be his breakout season. So I just wanted to kind of put that across because, like I said, I wasn't being overly negative. At least I didn't think I was. As much as you guys would let me know in the comments. Some of you guys understood where I was coming from. Like I said, there always seems to be extremes in any fan base of like it has to be unbelievable or it's absolutely abysmal and there's sort of no in between. And I like to be the voices in between where I highlight both and kind of see it from both sides. At least I try anyway. So, hey. The only thing I would disagree with Maresca slightly is he says that we deserve to win. And I know what he meant because we had a lot of possession. We controlled big spells of the game. But the only thing we couldn't find was that solution to the problem. And that was where I kind of feel like, yeah, they are the type of games we should be winning. We have had a very small pre-season. 2 games, very short rest. It's not as much as everyone else. We are going to be slow, sluggish and lethargic. Like I said, it was just surprising that coming off the back of the 2 games we had, it was such a stark contrast of what we've just seen to what we actually saw yesterday. It's going to take us time. I'm fully aware of that. I'm not expecting us to, win every game 4 or 5-0. I've never been that type of fan. And, there are people saying that we're in a title race and people saying that we're not. I'm just seeing how it goes, if I'm being honest. I think that we can have a very good push and challenge for things across all competitions. I'm not hammering on saying that we're going to win the league because, again, we have a different set of circumstances to a lot of the teams and we've got to adapt and, we've got injuries just like other teams, but we've had a shorter rest and it'll be interesting to see how far this team can go. So I kind of agree with Maresca in terms of I felt like we did deserve it in terms of domination, but we just didn't unlock that Palace defence. Yes, we had a few chances, but we just didn't put them away. We're very wasteful in that sense. And I feel like with the type of players we've got that have been brought in to beat a low block and try and, have that high and wide play, we didn't really have too much of it. Second half, we did a lot more. Obviously, Esteval was fantastic when he came on and really tried taking the game by the scruff of the neck. But hey, it is what it is at the end of the day. It was a 1-1 draw. We take a point. This time last season, we lost 1-0 to City. So it's improvement, right? We've got a point on the board. And I feel like we were definitely going to bounce back against West Ham. But that is what Josh Acheampong said. How do you feel that he fared overall? I think overall he had a very good game. Like I said, I just pointed out a few of the build-up mistakes from my end anyway. Maybe I was wrong to do so. I don't know. But let me know your thoughts and opinions of what Maresca said about us deserving to win and what your thoughts on Josh Acheampong playing for the whole season. Do you feel like he can fit that role? Will it be his breakout season? And how well do you think he stepped up yesterday? Vena Casagrande, I think that's how you pronounce it, apologies if that's wrong, has reported that Chelsea rejected a £45 million offer from West Ham for Andrey Santos. Chelsea contacted West Ham's board to inform them that Santos will not leave the team and advise them to abandon the pursuit. This is what we want to hear. We love this. With all the mystery around Chelsea players coming and going, all the reports and briefs that come out, whether it's true, whether it's not, or whether it's got legs, where it hasn't, whether it's gossip or concrete, whatever it may be. The one thing that Chelsea have been very, very sturdy on is, again, squashing links that we're, to players we're not linked to. They come out very quickly, and I respect that. It stops the speculation going on for too long. But also with Andrey Santos, they've been very, very clear. He is not for sale. He is part of the first team. He is one of us. Like, he's not leaving Chelsea Football Club. It would take an astronomical bid to even think about it, but he is staying. So I absolutely love this. £45 million. I honestly feel like it would take a ridiculous price like 80, 90 million to pry Santos away from Chelsea. I don't know if that sounds outrageous, right, because he's a youngster, and whether or not you feel like he's worth that amount of money yet is a different story. I'm just saying that Chelsea's saying no, and they've even called the board saying, don't even bother. Like, no thank you. But just, he's not leaving. Leave us alone. Don't pursue this anymore, because you're not going to get the player that you want. It would be such icing on the cake that if he plays against West Ham and scores, that would be so nice from, I don't know, maybe an ironic point of view. I don't know. Maybe that's just me being a salty fan. I don't know. But I feel like Andrey Santos is actually knocking on the door to start against West Ham. Because again, upon more reflection, I said that Enzo Fernandez really didn't have a good game. He was very average. I'm not going to sit here and berate him and say he was awful, but it definitely wasn't an Enzo Fernandez performance that we are used to seeing, especially off the back of last season. Andrey Santos is definitely knocking on that door for a first team start, and I feel like a game like West Ham, it would be a perfect opportunity for Andrey Santos to start and get minutes. I think he would do fantastically well. He's got that South American grit. He's aggressive. He presses well. He can tackle. He can normally shoot. Obviously, the chance he missed against Palace, we're not going to hold that against him. But normally, that's bread and butter for him. Seen him do it time and time again for Strasbourg, coming onto it at the right time, hitting that into the back of the net, or at least forcing a save. He just mistimed that run slightly, so he was off balance when he struck it. And those things are going to happen. Again, he's young. But I feel like he's also going to have a very good season in a Chelsea shirt. So I'm very happy that Chelsea have rejected that £45 million offer. They've also been very consistent in their messaging that he is not going anywhere, and they've also advised West Ham's board to not even bother, and they've said the same to Bayern Munich, and said the same to other clubs as well that have inquired. Santos is a very sought after player. We're very lucky that he's at Chelsea, and I'm also very grateful that the board see that and go, he's going nowhere. So let me know your thoughts and opinions below. I really can't talk today. I think I'm coming down with something, but let me know your thoughts regarding Andrey Santos. Do you think this will be a breakout season for him as well? Do you think he's going to get lots of game time? Do you think he can start against West Ham? And what are your thoughts on Chelsea saying absolutely no to everyone coming in for him? Gazzetta dello Sport has reported that Inter Milan have turned down a £43 million bid from Chelsea for Italy defender Alessandro Bastoni. Now, this seems to be very much paper talk, because it seems to be the same figure that gets thrown around regarding the centre-back. We know that you've got, again, a division within the fan base where we need a centre-back, a division in the fan base that say we're good with our centre-backs. The club have basically said, we have a depth and plethora of players to choose from. We should at least try and see what we can do from that. Maresca has basically said, we don't have another Levi Colwill. Fofana can do it, but he needs to learn and stay fit. Tosin can do it. Can he do a whole season of doing that? So there's a very mixed consensus around the centre-back situation. And I feel like the paper is obviously, there's been whispers of Bastoni coming to the Premier League for a little while now. There's a lot of fans that would love to see the sign of Bastoni. I would as well. I think he's an incredible player. I don't see it happening, though, if I'm being honest. Again, happy to be proven wrong. But this £43 million seems to be this magic figure that's being thrown around. That was the figure that's thrown around about Konate a few days ago. It also popped back up a few days prior to that as well. And now it's for Bastoni. So yeah, it's just a bit of paper talk. I'm not saying that it's gospel. I just wanted to get your thoughts and opinions, because I genuinely want to try and get a nice consensus with you guys. Do you honestly feel like we're okay with our centre-backs, or do you feel like we need to go and strengthen? I still stand on what I said. I feel like we do have a plethora of centre-backs, and I can honestly see the board saying, right, we have these players at our disposal. Yes, some are injured, but they are coming back. There's enough centre-backs, right? Levi Cole isn't the be-all and end-all. That's going to be their point of view, even though he's so integral to how we play out from the back, and we can all see that. I feel like the board are going to give it till January and go, right, we either really need a centre-back, or actually we'll be okay, because Fofana's come back and played that role well, or Tosin's really excelled, or Acheampong's really stepped into that role well, or Hato has stepped into that role well, or whatever it may be. I feel like the board are not just going to go splash cash for no reason, purely because, like I keep saying, once Colwill comes back, you then have another issue of, okay, we now need to offload a couple of centre-backs, whereas right now, yes, we're letting Renato Vega leave, Anselmino may be staying as well, which could be another extension in terms of that plethora of centre-backs we can try out. Again, he's young, not expecting to be Van Dijk on his debut, but it's another option for Enzo Maresca. And I can appreciate how frustrating it must be for someone like Maresca, because when Colwill plays like 64 games and is an integral part of your system, and then all of a sudden he's gone for the season, that's not the plans, and it's unexpected. So it's kind of like, okay, cool, we do have these other players, and he's made it very clear that, you know, he doesn't have another Colwill that can do it, but he has players that can learn to do it or can do it, but just need to learn how to and step into that role. So I'd just like to know your thoughts and opinions. Would you go in for someone like Bastoni and spend big? you think that we should be happy with the centre-backs that we've got. What do you think the board are going to do? Are they going to go in the last week of the window, or will they wait till January and then decide from there? I know we don't typically make a lot of purchases in January, but that's kind of what the window's for. Mid-season stopgap of, okay, cool, we're really struggling in this area. We can go in the market, pay a little bit more because it's mid-season, but it can kind of tie us over to the summer. So very curious to know your thoughts. Fabrizio Romano has reported that Chelsea made some calls in June to show interest in Kenan Yildiz, but Juventus blocked any possibility of it happening. This is just quite nice to know. We're not going to spend too much on this. We spoke about Yildiz last month, weeks ago, and, it was kind of like, does this have concrete legs? Is it just paper talk? So it's just quite nice to know that, Fabrizio's come out and said they actually made phone calls and interest, just shut the door and said no chance. So there must have been some sort of legs to the rumours that were coming out through the newspapers. And I've said this a few times, not that I trust everything that's ever been said ever. Of course, the whole reason is I react to it, give my opinion, ask for yours, right? And I like having conversations about it because everyone has a very different opinion, and that is football. And I love it. But what is quite nice is kind of have that reaffirmation of any sort of rumours and whispers that come out when you've got someone like Fabrizio who's very rarely wrong. He is wrong at times, don't get me wrong, but very rarely wrong, comes out and confirms it. Say, yeah, Chelsea did make some phone calls to Juventus for Kenan, and they basically said no chance. So it's just quite nice to know that there was some sort of connection there. It wasn't completely out of nowhere. And like I said previously, Chelsea have been coming out very quickly and kind of stamping their foot down saying we're not linked with that player. They didn't really say that with Kenan Yildiz. So it would have been very interesting to see how the negotiations went if Juventus would have allowed it, because he is an incredible player. He could have played on that left-hand side. He's one of those technically gifted players that Enzo Maresca would love to have in his system, I'm sure. Not to put words in his mouth, but I'm sure he would love a player as talented as him. It would have been very interesting to see how much it would have cost, what sort of wages he wanted, how he would integrate into the system. Obviously, Chelsea have moved on from that. We're trying to hunt down, obviously, Xavi Simons and get that deal over the line, try and offload Nkunku, who we're going to be speaking about in just a second. So it's just a bit more of confirmation that, there was actually a bit of truth to the rumours that came out last month, and it wasn't just something that completely made up. But let me know your thoughts regarding Kenan Yildiz. Should Chelsea have tried pushing even harder against Juventus, saying, hey, can we make this happen? Or are you happy that we've moved on from him as a target? Football Insider have reported breaking news that Nicolas Jackson has told those close to him of his desire to join Aston Villa this summer. The Villains value Jackson at around £60 million, which falls short of Chelsea's asking price. Pletty have reported that Aston Villa have added Nicolas Jackson to their shortlist and are closely monitoring his situation. Fabrizio Romano has also reported, keep an eye on Nicolas Jackson. Premier League clubs are in conversations, plus keep an eye on Italy, particularly AC Milan, only if all conditions are deemed acceptable to them. This Nicolas Jackson saga has got to come to a close sooner rather than later, because the window is very, very slowly shutting. And there are a lot of clubs that seem to be interested in Nicolas Jackson. Villa is not the one that's kind of not gone away. Some of the Italian clubs, I think AC Milan, maybe Juventus. Juventus were interested, quite a few. We go back to the same old story. Who has the cash? We want our money. And knowing how the inflated prices are so far in this window, we want to get the bag. If we're going to let Jackson go, which we're not overly fussed on doing, we'll quite happily keep him and reintegrate him, but we'll take the bag if we can get it. It's essentially Chelsea sitting there waiting, going, okay, well, who's serious about it then? I think Jackson, we've reported on him many, many times. He's basically said that he wants to leave. Chelsea have said if he tells us he wants to stay, we'll help him, but we're actually going to help him try and find a suitor for his exit, which I think is quite, mutual for both parties. Jackson clearly wants to leave and be someone special. He's not been involved in that first Premier League game. He wasn't involved in the pre-season games. It's very evident, very clear that he's off. Does he go to Villa? That's the question. Would you take £60 million for Jackson? Because I would. I would take £60 million for Jackson to go to Aston Villa, because that could open a potential transfer coming our other way from Villa, whether it's now or in January or whatever. We scratch your back, you scratch ours, that type of thing. Not in a PSR sense, but just in a player-to-player sense and club-to-club sense. Obviously, Emery is there. He has a connection with Jackson. He gave Jackson his sort of breakthrough at Villarreal. Big fan of Jackson. Think he would do well. But then it does pose the question of what's happening with Ollie Watkins. I don't see him leaving anytime soon. So it'd be very interesting to see how that plays out. The Italian clubs, we've had a few that have come out and said, we can't afford it. You need to reduce your sort of expectations. I always say Chelsea should stand firm and say, no, that's the price, deal with it. But however, I think it was Juventus that came and said, look, we can pay the 60 million, not a problem. It's just the wages, whether that's going to be an issue. And they also said a similar thing about Christopher Nkunku. So I think that's reasonable. I think that's fair. But that's not club to club, that's more player to player on the personal terms. I don't see Jackson failing to agree personal terms with any club that wants to come buy him this summer, because he's made it very evident that he wants to go. So just wanted to kind of have a little bit of an update regarding Nicolas Jackson, because it went quiet for a little bit and now it's come back out. But Villa are basically keeping an eye on, so a few Italian teams are. And again, that window is slowly closing. So it'd be very interesting to know your guys' thoughts regarding where he's going to end up. Does he end up at Chelsea? Does he go to Villa for 60 million? Does he go to Serie A? Where do you think is the best option for Nicolas Jackson? Me personally, I feel like he'll want to stay in the Premier League. Why would you not want to stay in the Premier League? I think he'd do very well in the Serie A. I really, really do. I think he'd do very well when he'd develop. But I also feel like if you stay in the Premier League, your development is forced to accelerate. And if you don't keep up with that curve, you drop below the waistline. We've found that in the 2 seasons he's been at Jackson's been at Chelsea. I'm very grateful for what he's done. He's stepped up when we've not had anyone. And I feel like his GA has been very good in the last 2 seasons. Even though he's missed a lot of chances, he's not the perfect player, he's still developing. We know what he brings to the game outside of finishing. Obviously, his discipline's been pulled into question recently, as well as his finishing as well. So I feel like, you would stay in the Premier League, there's more money in it, but I also feel he'd do very, very well in the Serie A. So very curious to know your thoughts. And we've had loads of reports regarding Bayern Munich and Christopher Nkunku. This deal could be falling through. Sky Carver have reported Bayern Munich have failed in an attempt to sign Chelsea forward Nkunku on a loan. Multiple sources have reported after a meeting with Chelsea bosses, Pini Zava, I think that's how you pronounce it, has told Bayern today that Nkunku is likely to stay at Chelsea for at least another year. The proposed move to Bayern is in jeopardy. Ben Jacobs has reported that Chelsea made their position clear to Bayern that they want a permanent exit for Nkunku, and the players are on the same page. Talks are ongoing, Bayern are still optimistic, and different formulas are being discussed. Fabrizio Romano has reported that Bayern and Chelsea keep talking over Nkunku even today. Chelsea want a permanent deal. Bayern's response was, let's try to be creative. Maybe a loan with an option that could turn into an obligation, something like this. Let's see next week. Now, I find this very, very interesting because I've said before, when Nkunku has been linked with Bayern Munich strike me as a type of club that aren't going to mess about. They've been sniffing around Nkunku since January. We outpriced that move in January. Fair enough. It is what it is, right? I mean, we wanted like 80 million. We called it the January tax. They didn't like that. That's fine. I get that. They've still been monitoring him. They've still been sniffing around him. They clearly want the player. They've just let Kingsley Coman go. He's gone over to Saudi. Fair play to him. There is now a space in that squad for Nkunku and the type of player he is. Very versatile in the positions he can play. Chelsea have made it very clear, 43 million or 40 million pounds permanently, you can have him. That works out about 50 million euros. That's essentially 30 million euros short of what we offered you in January. So we've removed that January tax and said, look, if you still want him, you can have him. I'm very surprised that Bayern Munich have come out and said, let's get creative, let's maybe do a loan, right? And kind of see how things go. Maybe an obligation. Maybe next year we'll buy him. What are you on about? What are you on about? What is it with the German clubs at the moment, the Italian clubs at the moment, that are trying to do all these sort of like sneaky deals of, we're really interested in the player, but we're going to waste your time and stall the talks, try and wear you down and do a loan with an obligation or a loan with no obligation, or, we want to buy the player at like a third of the price. That's what we're offering. That's all the money we've got. It just makes no sense to me. Now, I do understand the business side of things. You want the best deal possible for your player. Of course you do. But I'm glad that Chelsea are just standing on business and are like, no, let's talk about this properly. You want the player wants the move. Personal terms are basically done. It's just about the fee. We don't want a loan with an obligation. We want a permanent deal. This is how much we want. Pay the money or come back with a counter. We don't want none of this loan with obligation, or it could turn into this and turn into that. You just pay the money, man. Just pay the money and let the player leave. He wants to move. He's basically waiting, almost like the Xavi Simons end coming to us. He's waiting in the wings because Nkunku's got to leave before we can proceed with that. So a lot of these domino deals are effective of a lot of things, right? A lot of players moving. And I'm just very surprised that Bayern have come out and said all this. And I'm not saying this is all gospel, but there's been a lot of reports from multiple sources saying very, very similar things, including Fabrizio. The talks are continuing, but they want to get creative with it. Why? Why is this the window where we've worked with people like Sunderland or Everton or Burnley, and they were like, out of nowhere, they're like, oh, that's the asking price. Bang, 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 bang. Here's the money. We can have the player, please. Job done. Job done. And these are clubs that you probably wouldn't expect to go do a double deal with Chelsea for 45 million, or, buying Broja for around 20 million, Ugachukwu for over 20 million. Like, it just makes no sense to me. Whether that's because Chelsea have had the upper hand in the negotiations, or we've just said this is what we're after, and they've gone, all right, sweet, we'll pay it. Not a problem. And again, maybe I'm being naive, because I know that not all business works like that, and I know that negotiations obviously happen, but I just find it very strange at this window. It's been a lot of the European mainland teams that are kind of like, yeah, but what about this? Or, yeah, but we ain't really got the money. And it's like, well, we give you 60 million euros last week. What do you mean you've got no money? Like, we're not asking for all of it back, but at least be fair in the market value. I still feel like Nkunku is worth £40 million, especially in this window of the player inflation, regardless of his form, recently or not. He's not been injured for a long time. He has played well recently, but regardless of that, he's a very technically gifted player. It just hasn't worked out for him at Chelsea. And I feel like he would tear up the Bundesliga again like he did before we bought him. I don't think 40 million is outrageous. Now, yes, we have been lucky with a few deals, like Saudi coming in for João Felix, which obviously sets a precedent as well. We sold Noni for over 50 million. Now, if I was to ask you the question, who is the better footballer, Nkunku or Noni, who would you lean towards? Because I would lean towards Nkunku. Yes, I know Madueke's young and developing, etc., but based on like who's a better player coming into their prime as well, Nkunku's 27 years old, I think 40 million is fair, personally. So I'm just very, very surprised. I don't think that the deal will fall through, but it looks like it is on the verge of Chelsea saying, do you know what, don't worry about it, we'll find someone else, based on the fact that we're like, permanent deal, 40 million, what's your counter offer? None of this loan with obligation stuff. None of this, let's get creative. So I feel like the deal will probably still happen this week, but I'm just very surprised that Bayern of all clubs have said, we just don't want to pay that money, we're going to try and get creative. When I actually thought to go, 40 mil, do you know what? We've been scouting this player for a long time, we've wanted him for a long time, it's not the 80 million euros you quoted us in January, sweet, we'll pay that money. Looking at all the other transfers, we've got a bit of money, the wages don't seem to be an issue. Just very, very surprised. So I'd like to know your thoughts and opinions down below regarding this. Do you feel like this deal is going to fall through? Do you feel like Chelsea will keep him for another year? Will he go to Bayern Munich before the end of the summer transfer window? Let me know your thoughts and opinions down below. And that's all the latest Chelsea news. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on everything that's been reported down below in the comment section. I love having a conversation with you guys. And if you haven't watched this video all the way to the end, firstly, you're a real one. And I mean that, you're a real one. But secondly, there'll be a thumbnail appears on the screen. So if you are a Chelsea fan who enjoys Chelsea content, make sure you hit that thumbnail because you'll enjoy that video too.